My friends, the moment we have all been waiting for is here. The introduction of the legendary greatest of all time, Hajime Saito, and the prelude into the Kyoto arc, which I think arguably is my favorite shonen arc of all time, right up there with Chimera Ant, Chapter Black, Saiyan Saga, a few others up there, but Kyoto might be number one as far as shonen arcs go. The Kenshin manga that I own is the 3-in-1s, that's the cheaper version, but starts at volume 7, and this episode adapts the first 3.5 chapters of this, 48, 49, 50, and a little bit of 51. Doesn't adapt the entire thing, so still roughly about 3 chapters an episode. So let's get right into it, and let's talk about the introduction. I'm going to try not to get into spoilers as far as the future of the series goes, and obviously, besides this episode, we only have 2 more episodes of season 1, so we're not getting very far. We are getting the introduction, and let's get right into it. So first I want to start with what we were talking about before in the last episode review that I did, where this whole beginning portion of Kenshin, how it's all these kind of little mini arcs, how it's building up the characters, how it's setting the foundation, but what it's really doing behind the scenes of all of that, even though there are great action sequences, there are great storylines, there is a lot of great things that are happening plot-wise in the first, segment of RUROUNI KENSHIN. I think one of the major things that it really sets up and establishes is Kenshin finding some kind of semblance of peace and finding a home. So the series is obviously called RUROUNI KENSHIN. Rurouni means wanderer, which means Kenshin does not have a place of his own. He does not have a home location. He's a vagabond. He goes from place to place. He's kind of been wandering Japan for the past 10 years after the war, after he decided to take up a reverse-bladed sword, after he decided to stop killing, after the new Meiji era of Japan was ushered in, and he took things more of like an individual approach now, as opposed for fighting for a side somewhere over some kind of idealism. He's instead working to protect people on an individual basis. So whenever he sees some kind of injustice, whenever he sees somebody in trouble, he decides to protect that one person. So he's turned into a person that is a protector, and he's been kind of wandering this entire time. After finding Kaoru, and then slowly, gaining a relationship with Yahiko, kind of like a father figure, with Sanosuke, kind of like a best friend. And even though, the relationship dynamic between Kenshin and Kaoru is not like 100% established, you can tell there's feelings there, there's emotions there, and Kenshin has finally found a place that he can call home. So after all this time and all this trouble and all this turmoil, it's almost as if the warrior could finally rest. And the Kyoto arc is when all that is thrown out the goddamn window. And we get the introduction of Hajime Saito. Now, in the 2023 new anime, Saito was actually introduced in the very, very first episode. The very first episode starts with a flashback during the war, and we see Kenshin taking out a bunch of Shinsengumi guys, and then Saito steps up to the plate to fight him, and it cuts away. And it's kind of like a beginning tease that we don't really get to see until now. That doesn't happen in the original 90s series, and it doesn't happen in the manga. It was definitely a tease for the season, and I think it was done very deliberately because it's going to bookend the season. Now, when it comes to Hajime Saito himself, there's a few things we need to talk about, but I don't want to spoil anything for people that are experiencing Kenshin for the first time. So I will say this. First of all, Hajime Saito is based on a real historical figure, the real leader of the 3rd squad of the Shinsengumi. So of all the characters in Kenshin, Saito is actually a real guy. But obviously everything that happens in the series is 100% fictional, but he is based on a real historical figure. So if you want to look up the actual Hajime Saito, you could do that. And there's a lot of cool information out there about the guy. The other thing about Saito is his parallel to Kenshin in many, many different ways. Now, from what is revealed in this episode only, we know that he was part of the Shinsengumi, which was the main opposing force to the imperialists that Kenshin's side was on. So back in the war, the Shinsengumi basically wanted to keep Japan exactly how it was. They didn't want the change. They didn't want the new era. They were very traditional, right? So they really, really care about their country. They really, really care about Japan. And Saito was one of the top guys on that side. So they directly conflicted with one another during the war. So on opposing sides, that much is true. The other thing about Saito is, unlike a lot of the other characters, we've seen Kenshin kind of struggle a bit in fights before, and we've had really strong characters like Aoshi or Janae, but Saito is definitely on that other level. Saito is comparatively just as powerful as Kenshin. And this is one of the first times that we're going to see this in the series, where we have a character that is just as skilled, just as formidable, just as strong, and just as experienced as Kenshin is. And that makes him extremely dangerous to the cast. Now, on top of that, Saito, during all this time, has not given up his ideals to kill. All right, so he is still willing to kill. He's still willing to inflict damage. And basically what he did to Sanosuke, like he shows up posing as this medicine merchant. Sanosuke, actually, kudos to him, noticed the calluses on his hand and noticed that this guy, there's no way this guy is actually a medicine merchant. This is too weird, too strange. He's definitely been handling swords before, so Sanosuke picks this out right away. And I know you could say Sanosuke was kind of used as a jobber in this scene, and maybe that's true, but Sanosuke has a lot of really amazing things that are going to happen to him as the story goes on. So this is just an introduction, so don't take it to heart and don't take it too personally if you're a big Sanosuke fan. Don't worry, he does get a lot stronger and a lot of really cool things happen with him. But I think because we've seen how strong Sanosuke is so far in the series, I think Saito kind of showing up and taking him out as quickly as he did definitely showcases what kind of level this character's on and what we are in store for moving forward. In this episode, we also learn about Saito that during this time, he has taken up a deal to become an assassin with this other character that was in charge of the assassinations that he sent Janae on. So Janae, the character from early in the season that could, freeze people with his eyes, that Kenshin was actually almost willing to kill in order to save Kaoru until Kaoru was able to break the Shinoippo herself. That guy was employed by the man that just employed Saito. Now, to throw an even bigger twist on top of that, as Saito agrees to be this guy's assassin and take out Kenshin, because now Kenshin is the target, he says, I have to go back to my other job now, and puts on his police officer uniform. So Saito is also working for the police department. And I think you can tell by this episode, even without giving anything away, that Saito is definitely playing his own game here. Now, in this episode alone, it's up to you to decide if Saito is an assassin, if he is a police officer, if all of it's fake, if both of it's true, is he playing both sides? What is going on with this character? And he's setting things up to meet Kenshin, and obviously he's kind of working and manipulating things behind the scenes for his own gain. And so you guys can kind of try to put that together yourselves. I'm not going to really explain anything with that, but yeah, he did agree to assassinate Kenshin, and he is a police officer. So what is going on with this guy? Time will tell. Now, the other character here is Akamatsu, who is another assassin, and we know that he's nothing. We know Kenshin can defeat him momentarily. So the episode ends with Akamatsu's the guy. He's like, I want to kill Kenshin. And Saito's like, all right, well, I'll just, I'll write a note and, tell him where to go, and then you can go kill him, right? It's like, obviously, Saito knows that Kenshin's going to take this guy out. So the episode ends on a cliffhanger where Kenshin is fighting Akamatsu. We all know what's going to happen there. While at the same time, Saito is returning to the dojo where Yahiko is, right? So that's the cliffhanger here. Now, what I do want to say also is that in the 90s Kenshin series, I do think they handle this introduction a bit better. I think it's a little bit more artistically driven. Kenshin has a little bit more vivid nightmares about the Shinsengumi before Saito shows up. I like the sequence with Saito and Sanosuke a lot more in the 90s version. At first, I thought they cut something out because it shows him stab Sanosuke and then it cuts away. And there's more to that fight. There's more to that scene. And they do show it a little bit later when Kenshin is kind of reflecting on what he thinks happened. But in the manga and in the original 90s version, you get that whole scene at once. And I think it works a lot better in the 90s version because you see Sanosuke stand up again. And then Saito pushes the blade in further and then takes him down. So there's a little bit more to the fight there that you don't really get to see in this in the new version. The 90s version also stretches this sequence out basically into 4 episodes of this introduction, right, of this prelude. Whereas in this season, in the new version, we're going to get 3 episodes. So this first episode here had material that was in the first and second episode of Saito's introduction in the 90s. And because the 90s was able to stretch it out to 4 episodes instead of 3, they were able to take their time with it a little bit more. And so I feel like the pacing of the 90s version was better. And this is no fault of the 2023 version here. It's not their fault. I know they probably can't use the same music. But when the Kyoto arc begins in the 90s version, they start using a lot more new tracks for the OST. They use Departure, which is one of the best Kenshin tracks of all time. and it just makes the whole thing feel so ominous and epic, like something like really hard is going to go down, you know? And the music for this 2023 version, like, it's good, but it's not Departure. You know what I mean? Like, that track, like, go listen to that track on its own, and it'll make you just want to go out into, like, a grass field in the middle of the night and stare at the sky and just reflect on your entire life. Like, it's that good. You know what I mean? Like, 2023 does not have that, and it's not its fault, and I shouldn't hold that against it. But goddamn, like, the music really picks up in the 90s version at this point in the series, and, like, oh, I wish it was there. Regardless, though, I did really enjoy this episode, and because of how much they do cover in this one, I can tell you guys right now, I mean, this isn't a spoiler, you know they're going to fight at some point. I can tell you right now, like, Kenshin and Saito are going to fight in the next episode. Like, there's not enough material to stretch out an entire 22-minute episode before they actually fight. Unless they just add a lot of material to stuff that happens in between. Like, I think it's going to go down in the next episode, and I think the season is going to end exactly where a lot of us think it's going to end. All I'm going to say is fireflies. That's going to be the final scene. So, dude, it's going down. Next episode, Kenshin versus Saito. Anyways, guys, let me know what you thought of this episode. If you saw it, if you're a longtime Kenshin fan, how does it feel to see Saito once again? One of the most badass motherfucking characters. I go back and forth between Kenshin and Saito. Like, they're both my favorite characters of the series. Saito, I might say, is my favorite, but Kenshin just has so much to him. You know, he has so much to, like, I don't know. These two characters are my favorite, so I'm just happy to see them. And if you're a first-time Kenshin watcher, if you're experiencing the series for the first time, what are your ideas about Saito? What side do you think he's at? Do you think he's on the assassin side? Do you think he's on the police side? Do you think he's on his own side? Is all of it fake? Or is he just a humble medicine merchant? That could be true. Anyways, if you like this review, give it a thumbs up and a comment down below. Let me know how you feel about it to help it out in the algorithm. Also, thank you to all my longtime Kenshin fans, you guys that have been here for the whole season. We're almost done, and I really, really appreciate you guys coming back every single episode, man. It really does mean a lot to me. I'm glad there's other Kenshin fans out there. These videos might not do well, but I'm so glad that there's like a small core audience of us still out there, man, because I really do love this series. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.